And when you do 506C as a syndicator, now you're only allowed, the government SEC says you're only allowed to take in accredited investors at that point. And to make it harder is when you take in those investors, government says, Mr. Syndicator, we don't trust you. So we need third-party verification that these guys are all accredited. So that makes it a little bit of a headache administrative-wise. When people go into those deals, they have to have that third party, that letter from Commonplace's InvestorVerify.com.
This is a story about a dude named Lane. Then one day he went and tried to rent them out, and then he became one of the domain.
Okay, so a lengthy question here. I'll first answer like what's the difference between 506B and 506C. So 506B are deals where actually most deals are structured like this. If you go look on the SEC website, they call it EDGAR. I don't know what it stands for, but it's essentially a database of all deals out there. Most deals, I'd say 90 to 97% of deals are 506B offerings, which is the traditional way of syndicating money where you go out to your private list. Nothing is mass marketed out there. It's a private list, and therefore you can take in a limited number of passive investors or limited number of non-accredited passive investors. So what a lot of people are doing these days is they're doing a lot of like gray area marketing deals on the internet, or they're really out there, or they might be using, I don't know, strange SEC stuff where I think their lawyers are telling them, hey man, you better just bring in accredited only and do a 506C offering. And then you can just go balls to the wall and just mass market for investors. And we tried to do this a long time ago, and you guys are gonna think this is funny, but we realized that, hey, if you just do a Facebook ad, people just aren't going to throw in $50,000, $100,000. And plus, those people aren't on social media just throwing down money on ads they see on that platform. This is where you always have to test things. And I was earlier doing this. And then obviously now I have the firm belief that if people don't know who you are, you haven't built a relationship with people, and you don't have the right investors, then they're not going to invest anyway. So I realized that the 506C option to just go out there and blast the internet and in a way do Hail Marys for our investors just doesn't work. And it doesn't fit my business where, again, the Hui is meant to be like a boutique group. It's a smaller inner circle. Granted, our circle is a lot bigger than most people who are just blasting stuff out on the internet. That's for sure. And that's indicative of, I think you guys have invested over like maybe $120 million, which is just crazy to me that you guys have entrusted me in the system that much, which I take great respects at that. But a lot of these guys are just like, screw it, I have no ability to build relationships. I just need to shoot this stuff out into the internet or do radio ads, podcast ads, and I need to only do 506C. And when you do 506C as a syndicator, now you're only allowed, the government SEC says you're only allowed to take in accredited investors at that point. And to make it harder is when you take in those investors, government says, Mr. Syndicator, we don't trust you. So we need third-party verification that these guys are all accredited. So that makes it a little bit of a headache administrative-wise. When people go into those deals, they have to have that third party, that letter from Commonplace's InvestorVerify.com. So that said, we still do 506B offerings to our private group. You got to build a relationship first. I got to feel comfortable with you. I'm a little bit still hesitant on sophisticated investors or non-accredited investors is a loose term, but what I want to see is somebody who's owned rental property before. It is a funny one where we had like a 50 unit, and those of you guys who've owned rental properties before, you guys all know that when you turn on those air conditioners for the first time in March or April, a good chance that they're just going to break. And sure enough, a handful of them went offline, and we were able to fix a couple of them. And then it was like a $10,000 or $15,000 bill that's on the P&Ls. So like back then, the investors, they watched this stuff like a hawk, and the accredited investors were like, what the heck is this? $15,000 repair on HVACs? You are a horrible syndicator sponsor operator, right? You're supposed to do your management and your maintenance and check the stuff that doesn't break. Come on, man. Do you even own rental property? All the sophisticated investors own rental properties are like, wow, I was surprised. Not more than 5 broke. And they just know, and they understand. That's what I mean by understanding the business or stuff. And you know what? We're not going to pay distributions that much. It was probably fine for that quarter, but that's the stuff that kind of happens. So sophisticated investors on the whole grand scheme of things are less desirable overall. So if you're a sophisticated investor, non-accredited, there's a whole like hour-long coaching call that I did with one of my non-accredited investors where we talked about the etiquette, right? Like you want to have yourself removed from investor list. You want to be that real annoying non-accredited investor, because unfortunately non-accredited investors, we all know, don't have that much money. You go into one or two deals, you ask a gazillion questions and you're a real pain in the butt, and you blew your whole load and you're not going to invest anymore. It's not a very good investment of time for a syndicator sponsor. On the other hand, I get it. I was there not too long ago, and I understand that what else is there? You can go burr some properties, which is a waste of time and risk, or you can buy a bunch of turnkeys like how I did. And we all know how that is the greatest thing in the world, especially when your net worth gets higher for scalability. So this is where I have a soft spot in my heart for the right sophisticated non-accredited investors. But this is where the goal of myself is to bring in the right people, right? This is why we've had to remove maybe 0.5%, less than 0.5% of people who come in, because number one, they're just assholes, right? And I say that and people think that I'm impatient, but I like to think I am. But you guys know who I'm talking about. Some people are just jerks and they don't belong here. I don't want to work with them. And I say that because a lot of you guys are awesome people. I'd like to have beers with you guys. I encourage you guys to come down to Hawaii, hang out with me and the rest of the group, because we have a strong community of hardworking professionals here. And let's all drink and be merry and get rich together. It's a cool thing to be a part of. Some people, and this is what I'm realizing too, and this is good insights as we kind of work with higher net worth clients. Like, it's not really about how much money you have, like your money mindset. Some people are just very tight. And I always work with this with myself, my wife, where you could have a lot of money, but you could be very cheap up here, or scarcity mind. That's unfortunately what gets you to the point where you have money. You have $500,000 net worth, you get to accredited status. But at some point, the switch needs to happen. And it's very unusual when you have people that are above $1 million, $2 million net worth, that switch hasn't happened. And I always feel that it's not like they're bad people. It's just the money-wise maturation process, they're not quite there yet. It's like the people that are like, you've got $1 million, $2 million, you're just not willing to pay a penny on like education or meeting other people or the family office group. I just don't understand it, but I get it. I was there at one time. I didn't want to pay for anything, but when I did, that's when my investment really started to take off, and I got rid of those turnkey rentals and really started to move as a passive investor myself. But enough on that. I don't know, maybe we'll go to 506C at some point. What's going to trigger that is like my lawyers probably just say, Lane, this thing is getting just too big, this investor group. We need to just be more conservative SEC wise and just go straight accredited investors. And at that point, I'm going to be a little sad, because the non-accredited investors are most fun. They're the kind of the spice of the party. And I think they need it the most. And maybe the solution is maybe one day I just do a Reg A plus, like George Newberry's AHP fund. But the hard thing there is that when you start to bring in investors under 5,000, even when you bring in investors more than $40,000, $30,000, your exception rate of difficult investors goes way, way up with those people. And us sponsors, we talk about it all the time, and we exchange people's blacklists. We don't want them in our groups. Who are those problem investors? So, I mean, we talk, everybody talks. And when you bring in investors less than a certain threshold, problems always come up, because they're just more attached to their money, as they should be. Right? It means more. 30 grand means more to a guy who's $500,000 net worth than $200,000 to somebody who's $5 million net worth. It's completely logical, and I get it. Do I ever communicate with folks from SEC? No, I do not. I have my lawyer do that. I will never talk to them. So you try not to talk to the bank. The lawyer always talks to them if they're ever doing anything non-administrative. And just like how you never talk to IRS, you always have your CPA do it, by the way.
This website offers very general information concerning real estate for investment purposes. Every investor situation is unique.
Always seek the services of licensed third-party appraisers and inspectors to verify the value and condition of any property you intend to purchase. Use the services of professional title and escrow companies and licensed tax, investment, and or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed, as in every investment there is risk. The content found here is just my opinion, and things change, and I reserve the right to change my mind. Above all else, do your own analysis and think for yourself, because in the end, you are the only person who is going to look out for your best interests.